Thank you all for joining me. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Like I said, if people filter in while I'm talking, that's just fine too. So thank you all for coming to the LinkML community call. We have one of the most amazing communities that I have gotten to work with, and I really appreciate you all being here and the excellent work that you bring to our community. So activity over the last month with LinkML and LinkML Map. We have uh 65 created PRs, 44 of which were merged. Well, 44 merged PRs, not necessarily those 65, with 16 authors and 15 reviewers. For issues, we created 46 and we closed 44. I love to see that number going in the downward direction. It's kind of exciting. And then 12 issue authors with 25 unique human contributors. That's down a little bit from last month, but that is, like I said, something really amazing about this community. We have a lot of people who contribute their time, and we do really appreciate all of you and your effort. Importantly, LinkML version 1.9.6 was released on December 1st, and the version 1.10 RC5 is out for testing. We're hoping to release that pretty soon. Any of you that are dependent on the LinkML toolchain for your work, we would really love to have you test that RC5 candidate and report any issues that you have to us so that we can make sure that we meet the needs that are out there. So what has happened in recently closed PRs? So generators, we have 3 deprecated generators that were removed for the 1.10. These were marked for deprecation several releases ago. And now that we're releasing 1.10, we're actually removing the code itself. So that's the gen YAML and the gen markdown and some old LinkML validators stuff. We have a new markdown data dictionary for generators, and we also have open PRs for Golang, SQL validation, and YAML. We'll talk just a bit more about those in my next slide. For infrastructure, the meta model files were updated. Thank you, Nico, for that. It was some really amazing work. We also, in that, discovered that we had a stale JSON meta model files folder. Instead of that, was there in addition to the actively developed JSON schema metadata meta model files. So we have removed that JSON directory. That is something that might impact people in the community if you were still using the old JSON files, but those haven't been developed for 4 years now. So removing them is really sort of a matter of making sure that people are on the correct model. In more deprecation, we removed the Pydantic version 1 code, so we're fully on Pydantic version 2. We already were. It's just the code now is also removed. And we are working on supporting Python 3.14. We have CSV and TSV work underway for Boolean and Truthy, and we also did some routine dependency updates. For documentation, Nico has been working on AI-assisted discussion guidelines and AI covenant. We also have generator-level governance proposal and some PR guidelines under review. And the licensing FAQ has been expanded. So open PRs needing some review. We have a few community PRs that we would love to have people in the community review these if you have any expertise in the area. So that is the SQL validation generator, the YAML inline handling. And then for bug fixes, the induced slot self-alias fix and cached checks JSON LD context. But one that could use community attention is this any of and range constraint stuff in compliance testing. We are working on understanding what needs to happen with the any of range constraints. And so opinions are going to be valued there as well. Finally, on LinkML Map, I would love to have some help on contributions in LinkML Map. I have a few PRs there that could use some review. If you use the LinkML tool chain and you would like to be more involved in the development, I would love to have your review and get you involved there. And with that, you can contact us. Like I said earlier, the LinkML is community driven, and this community is just one of the more fascinating and lovely parts of my work day. So I really appreciate all of the work that you've done. And if you want to be more involved, there are opportunities for us. So we're available by email, LinkML channels in Obo, Slack, and GitHub. And you can reach out to our community outreach manager for guidance, and that's Sarah. Again, really appreciate it. Oh, did I miss something that was already reviewed? Thank you for that. And with that, I would like to make sure that I have plenty of time for our presenters. I know I kind of rambled a bit. I apologize for that. So our first presenter, I'm really excited to see what David Linke has to show us. He is the head of the Department of Catalyst Discovery and Reaction Engineering at the Leibniz Institute for Catalyst, and he's going to talk to us today a little bit about copier. So David, take us away. Thank you.
Like what I want to talk about today is this new LinkML project template based on copier and why we made it. But before I start there, I have more words about like where I come from. So first, where are we located? So maybe not everyone is so familiar with European geography. So we are in the north of Germany at the Baltic Sea, and it's about like 30 miles to Denmark. So it's a sea, but it's not super big. And then the LICAT is a public-funded non-profit institute for research work on the area of catalysis. And like all the orange buildings here, I can maybe show it. So these are LICAT. So we have around 300 people in total, and are also evaluated routinely. So the Leibniz Society has a lot of institutes, I think around 50 in Germany, and we are one of them in the area of natural sciences. So now I have two slides about my group, or department, what we do. We have a high throughput group where we do parallel testing and reactor development for these kind of parallel catalytic tests. And why is it still done? It is because you can't predict catalyst properties very well by numeric simulation. You always need to do the experiment, and you want to do it most efficient, of course, and this means parallelization or robot-assisted preparation and so on. We also do like photocatalysis, so to do water splitting just by air, and there you need, of course, a catalyst to make this happen. And then also there's another group, it's reaction engineering, but it's reaction engineering plus data science since a long time. So on the one hand, we do like the reactor design. So we really build equipments from the ground up. So including the CAD drawings and then letting them manufacture with CNC machines. We do also the lab control software. And then, of course, all the data we produce in these parallel setups, they have to be evaluated, stored, and so on. And that's then my connection to data, and also which brought me finally to LinkML. In general, like what we do in my department is just a snapshot or a piece of the work in catalysis overall. It's a huge discipline, so covering also biocatalysis, for example, which we don't do, and homogeneous catalysis, which we don't do in my department, but in the institute. And we are more in the area of process engineering and heterogeneous catalysis. But this wide area then also demands for a domain-wide organization of data. And that's why, I mean, first of all, okay, catalysis is everywhere. Yeah, so in all energy sectors, in pharma, all just fuels, and they all go through catalytic process steps. And it's more than 90% of all goods which have catalytic processes involved in their manufacture. So this importance and also the heterogeneity of the community then led to the creation of an initiative in Germany 5 years or 6 years ago. And it's a part of the NFDI initiative, which tries to organize research data management in communities. And one of the communities that applied for funding was Catalysis. And there we also one of the creators of this NFDI for CAT project, where 16 academic partners work together, then also with an industrial advisory board to work on like shared vocabulary, structured data, standardized data format. And then, of course, for fair data, persistent identifiers is another important topic. And the idea is then, of course, to be more efficient in the sustainable, in the development of sustainable processes and switch in principle the raw material basis and go to a circular economy. So one point where I want to talk a bit more about as an introduction is the persistent identifiers, because that's where we applied the LinkML model first. And in general, the PIDs play a very important role in the FAIR criteria. So it's in, I think, in 4 or 5 of the 12 points. And there, what we had in mind, we wanted to do metadata-rich PIDs, which then enable a PID graph. So just linking the PID. So you need to know approximately, is this PID for a sample? Is it for a data set? Just this high-level information, who made it? You always want the contact information so that you could find out if a PID got stale and you could repair it. And then also we had to look at existing solutions, and DOIs are nice, but they have this central organization with DataCite or Crossref where you have to register. So it's super difficult for a research group to get access to it. So they have to go through the university, and then there's also payment by PID, which is very inconvenient if you just want to label samples, especially in a high throughput lab where you maybe make thousands a day, which can get then very expensive. So we thought we need something else, but we wanted to stay compatible. So we built up on the HandleNet system, where DOI is also a HandleNet system based PID. And here is an example. So in a handle DOI, you can always use this DOI resolution via handle. So it does also work. And then you can put in a no redirect query parameter, and then you just see the real handle record, so the PID record. And you see that in DOI system, there's no metadata information. It's just permission information plus the redirect link to the Zenodo page here in this case. And in principle, the HandleNet storage is a distributed storage system, which you could use to store also more data and also metadata. And in the case of the DOIs, then DataCite or Crossref, they have all this metadata information, and that's also how they somehow control. Like they are especially interesting because they can offer you the metadata, but they never put the metadata into the handle system, so it's more difficult to access, and you always have to go through them. And we wanted to have another way where we put the PID information, metadata information directly into the handle record itself. And here's an example from a PID for cut handle now, where you can see that you can write JSON information into the records of a handle. And then, of course, for these kind of records, you need a schema. And this schema then, of course, is the world of LinkML. And also what's interesting, the HandleNet already has the API, so you can retrieve the information that's stored here and get it as JSON. You don't have to program anything. So what we developed then is a LinkML model for this, and then it's very nice that LinkML has this documentation features, also of the structure of the records. Then also we have a Python package to make it easy for people to work with this. And then, of course, you can, because you have Python, you can do Jupyter notebooks to make it even more easy to access. And so this is what we built. And like here, we also wanted to have some additional features. So like you see, this is not directly schema documentation, but of course, we wanted to document the project plus the schema, and the cookie cutter template did not offer it. So we would have to change it. And also Cookie Cutter did not offer multi-version support. So this is all something we needed to change. And moreover, there's one big discussion in LinkML discussion forum started from Sierra based on experiences in the 2024 tutorial at this ISMB meeting. And there were a lot of negative experiences with the cookie cutter where beginners struggle to set it up. It was not very well structured, had too many features on the one hand, whereas like some things didn't work out of the box. So there are a lot of points in this discussion which we try to address in the copier template we made. So then what were the reasons for these major deviations from the cookie cutter, and what were they? So on the one hand, we used then copier as a tool instead of two tools, cookie cutter and craft, which is already some advantage. And in general, one of the main pros of copier is that it allows an easier updating to new template versions. So once you created your LinkML project, you also want to profit from improvements in the template. That was more difficult or quite difficult with cookie cutter and craft, and this is now very easy with a copier-based template. Then one point, a lot of people, they have no free choice of operating system, so they get Windows machines from their employer. So it's around 50%, I think, of all developers. So it's quite important to have Windows support in a community project. Not because you like it, but people have really no choice, and just make them, enable them to contribute. So I think it's important to do Windows support. Then it has a nicer CLI interface and has a config format YAML instead of JSON. And then, of course, you can comment in YAML, but you can't comment in JSON. So this is just a bit nicer. Not a revolution, but many small points. Then we also switched to just as a command runner instead of make. Make is just also difficult on Windows. There are only very old versions available. They're all different. And also just is a command runner, and make had some problems to read environment variables, cross-platform. And so there were several issues in the old cookie cutter template, which are now solved. And then also we modified the directory layout a bit to adopt the best practices of Python projects, so that people, when they learn Python or packaging based on LinkML, that they know not some strange standard, but they somehow learn how Python packages are structured today. And then also we needed to adapt the directory layout for larger projects, especially regarding the documentation. And we now follow also the rules, or I mean, the suggestion of the MKDocs team, which also proposed a certain layout where cookie cutter was not conforming with. And now I want to show it once, how it works. So I just start here with, you can see now the command line, or yes, probably.
Yes.
You see, yeah? Or
yes, you're good.
Switch?
Yes, we can see
so here
that.
in the command line interface, I start with an empty directory. We have already installed Git for Windows, just the default installation, and then we have just installed, and we have copier installed already. And so now the first thing, so you see it's an empty directory. I just have already a virtual environment, just because it's faster if I don't have to create it again, but it would be created automatically. And now when you start, you start with a copy command, and it downloads directly the template from the GitHub repository. And what it downloads is the latest release. So you don't get the head of the repository, but you get the latest released version. And so it's in principle now it's downloading. And then you are ask several questions. So what's the name? I just accept the defaults now. What's the name of the project? Then you have a Slack name where you don't have a minus in the name, but just underscores. Then you can have an email address for yourself, developer full name, GitHub organization name, and then also a short description of the project. You can change these also later on with Copier, which is also quite nice. And then you can pick a license, have a year of first release. And then you also ask several things like which affect the setup of GitHub actions. So we say, of course, we want to do a Python package and then use GitHub actions to publish to PyPy. You can have a documentation preview and pull requests. So maybe here's a question like, why is the default no? And this is if the contributions come from forks, which is the standard on GitHub, this action doesn't work. It could be nevertheless useful, and it's also doesn't give an error currently, so it was changed. But this is the reason why it's no, but just set it to yes if you work on your own. Then it creates the template. Then if I do it again, so it has filled the directory. Then maybe I scroll up and it directs you what you should do next. So the next step would be just setup. And now this doesn't work because I just made it like a Windows user would experience it. In the current Windows command, you don't have access to Git shell at once. So you have to set it or use the Git bash shell, which comes with the Git for Windows. But now here we can just set the path. And then in principle run just setup again, and now it works. So this could be one problem where just beginners struggle, and I will make probably a pull request so that by default it's putting it on path so that people don't have this problem in the future. But this of course has nothing to do with the template. So and now it creates in principle the whole structure. It installs LinkML, installs all the dependencies. And then it has the full structure of the project. And so next step would be I could just type just as a command. If I don't type anything else, it will list me all the commands that are available in the project. And now, because it's all set up, I could try just the tests. So I just tests. And then it runs all the tests. And this template has also some example where everything works already. So you can try the linter. The linter will produce, I think, 4 errors currently. And the tests, they just pass so that you understand how they are structured if you build up from that. And then also what is this nice feature of LinkML is that it does the live documentation server. So you can do just test doc, and then it will build the Markdown, build from Markdown your documentation and serve it locally. And then I can, in principle, open it here, and then you have the nice schema documentation. And also you have some pre-structure for a whole documentation in your project. So you have some like home, about, it's all empty, but you don't have to think about how to integrate your documentation into the schema documentation that's auto-generated. Then maybe as a fine, so I just stop the server, then could currently now the next thing what you could do is you can update or it should maybe if I could now say, I said in the initial installation, we have installed the latest release of Copier, but it's also possible to specifically ask for the head of the branch or the main branch. So now if I try that, it will complain again because I did not commit yet. So in this initial setup, it's already initialized your Git project, but it does not yet commit. And so I would have to git add everything. And then, did it do it now? Yeah, okay. So just complaining about line endings and then do git commit. And now if I do again the update, now it will succeed with the update and will put us onto the main, head of development in principle. Okay. Because we use an extension for Jinja templates, we always have to pass this trust so that we are allowed to use it. This is coming with copier in principle. The copier always wants to have this trust as an additional information. And now you see that it has put us to a new version here, which is then post 42. So 42 levels ahead of 4.1, which means we should do a release soonish. So this is in principle what I wanted to show. So it's all working very nicely. I also didn't have to do anything. So it still works, although I touched it half a year ago last time. So I was happy with this. And I just go back to presentation and have some minor things. So what is not yet in the template is one thing is this multi-version support for the documentation, but this is implemented in our PID for cut model. So you could go there to the repository and see how we did this. It's using Mike and then on adjusted GitHub action. Another point is that we use UV dynamic versioning also in the standard template, but currently we don't inject the version into the schema itself. And so now here in this repository, you'll find a trick how to do this, how to inject directly into the version file. And then also we also publish like schema artifacts for every version into GitHub pages as well with the documentation. So then just have one final slide. So based on this copier template, there were now several projects created in the NFDI space. So we have the PID model like what I showed. And then with the NFDI for Chem, which is a sister consortium, we have created two DCAT AP extensions, one a general extension, and then also one chemistry specific one with Philipp Strömert. I'm not sure if he's here today, but he also participates in the community routinely. And then very new is a core meta for cut, which is a metadata schema for catalysis, which will be further developed. So it's just, it's not even migrated to the NFDI for cut GitHub repository, but still on a private person's repository. And then regarding the template, next steps will be a release, like I mentioned. We should do one in the LinkML organization. And then also I made a pull request already to add tests for the template itself so that we recognize if something breaks before the user has to tell us. Okay, so that was it.
Thank you, David. This was amazing. I really appreciate the effort that you put into it.
You, but it could be just me.
Oh,
or
do other people hear me?
Or
yes.
I have
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, okay. So it's somehow it's muting me automatically. Great.
But yeah, thank you very much. Do you hear me now?
Yes, great.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you very much for this. This is an excellent overview of what is a really neat and useful project. We already have people in the chat saying that they have used it for their own recent projects. And I really appreciate the work that you've done here. I do have one question for you, and that is, obviously when you use something like copier, it's because you have a sense that you're going to need to do a lot of setups like this. And I wanted to know, what are your views with your company or with yourself about like how you're going to need to use multiple different LinkML schemas and how having a copier like really enables that for you?
I mean, like now we already see it's especially important for all the GitHub action maintenance and that you understand it. So like also now for the DCAT schemas or so, then they could ask me and I just know how it works. So it's so big advantage if you just stick on one schema or standard, how to do all this other stuff around the schema and to share the work on this one. And like here in the Institute, it was very nice for people just starting. So then they can start, and I can just tell them, start with this, make a simple schema, and they don't have to fight with all the small details which you had maybe 3 years ago. And now they can just start to work on a schema and don't have to work to get there.
That's great. Thank you.
And
I see Nico has a hand.
Yeah, to add to this, we have made some very amazing. So first of all, I also used your copier template. It was super smooth. There was 0 issues, and for a working project, I'm really thankful that you did this. So thanks for that. But I also totally agree with the kind of sentiment behind building a good infrastructure like that. We've been maintaining something similar for ontologies for many, many years called the Ontology Development Kit, which is doing, basically that for ontologies. And it's like, has really made a huge difference, not just in terms of like making it easier for individuals to bootstrap, but also as a community to help out when things break. People know how the workflows are implemented. You can more easily see like when things break, you have a shared mental model where to look, what things to consult, where the documentation is. I think it's a very, very great, very important piece of the overall infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks.
As one more related question, I wonder, many of us created our projects before we had this wonderful copier project and using cookie cutter or even setting it up by ourselves. And I wondered if you had any advice around, is it worth it to move to the copier, and how would you advise to do that?
Yeah, it's maybe interesting. So the initial versions, they were copier templates, but they produced exactly the same things. So like, I don't know, up to 0.17 or something, it was exactly the same. And then once we change the directory layout, of course, we break it a bit. But there's also in the README of the project, there's one part where it's written like how you can, in principle, migrate from a cookie cutter template. And that's not so difficult. And we did it for the decut schema extension. So they were all cookie cutter based, and then we moved them over. So it's okay. But for this, I would suggest that you create an empty copier template of current, like how it currently looks, to decide like all these merge conflicts which happen in Git, what to pick. Is it A or B in principle? You have to be sure, and then you need in principle the reference where you want to arrive at, and then it's not too difficult to change over. Although maybe some of the cookie cutter, because it was not perfect, people also modified a lot, and that I think that could be more problematic. But a standard cookie cutter is quite easy to migrate.
Great, thank you. I want to thank you again. This was an excellent talk. I'm really excited about this tool. I actually have 3 repos. I'm thinking about migrating over to it right now. And I really appreciate you sharing it with all of us, in addition to all of your excellent work on the project. With that, I'd like to transfer over to Nico. And Nico is going to talk about LinkML community governance and community discussion. Go ahead, Nico. Oh, I forgot to introduce you, Nico. Can you give us a short introduction about yourself?
Yeah, worries. Yeah. Thank you, Corey. So I'm Nico. Have recently joined the LinkML core team in a capacity as like maybe also a little bit of a developer, but also a bit of a kind of like governance and shepherd kind of position. I do a bit of triaging, and you will see some of the kind of stuff that I'm excited about as part of this presentation. I've been active in the kind of wider Monarch initiative environment for I think about 8 years now, and that is the environment that has prepared me for this like very, very enormously important and interesting task also here of helping the community a bit to streamline some of its processes. So yeah, that's about me. I'm gonna talk a little bit about some, proposals for revising and clarifying some of the LinkML governance ideas. Can someone just make sure it's confirmed that you see full screen and not the presenter screen on your
It
side?
looks correct to me.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, from many of the conversations that we've had in previous community calls, also some of the stuff that David has presented, we are now in a phase of LinkML that is super exciting. The community is growing and evolving. The adoption is expanding. More and more schemas are being developed, and we are no longer just, let's say, an environment where we are, developing a bunch of utility tools to manage our schemas, but we are in an environment where we are building a kind of, you can think of it like a shared contract, like a common language to talk about schemas, and more and more people are building infrastructure like generators and things like that around that language, and are starting to kind of depend also more and more on the fact that it works as expected. So things like, for example, our RC5 that we have out there now with lots of changes that were necessary to get the meta model synced up again with the overall LinkML toolchain and so on, should not result in things like everything breaking when David goes home and recompiles his schemas, his 4 or 5 or 6 schemas that he has with the new version of LinkML. So there's that we should. So the kind of idea is can we introduce a little bit of lightweight governance to help making these things a little bit more transparent and a little bit more stable. So governance in this sense is about making sure that we can foster change, like accelerate even the rate of change further, but without breaking trust on the other end. Making sure our downstream users aren't as affected in surprising ways, making sure that our changes are communicated in a very clear and transparent manner that can be, where everyone can contribute, where everyone can clearly, say their opinion and their concerns and their use cases. Maybe not yet to the extent that we do in some other projects where we are talking about like specific guidelines of how we communicate our changes in our commit messages and things like that. So this is a next level that I think might come to this project at some point, but we're not at this point yet. But just to get a sense, these are the kinds of things we want to clarify. We want to improve the way we communicate changes with each other. And of course, making decision making and things like that much more transparent. It should be clear for every single change to our shared model, our kind of shared committed language, as you will. It should be clear how it is motivated, and it should be always possible for someone to go back and see like what caused this this specific change in the behavior and the structure of the model. How was it justified? So here are some of the kind of concrete pieces that are out for proposal. So one of the kind of older suggestions, and thank you, Silvano, if you're here, for pointing me to some of the older discussions about this, is about formalizing a little bit our contributor roles in the organization. So right now it's a little bit like ad hoc: who is on which team, who sees what, who has which permissions, who has which responsibilities, and things like that. So we put out a simple 4-level proposal that divides the permissions into, sorry, not the permissions, that's exactly what we don't divide. We are dividing the responsibilities a little bit from community contributors, which are folks that are, like many of you, users of LinkML, that are dependent on the LinkML tools, that are reporting bugs for that they've discovered, that may even make occasional contributions in forms of PR, but don't have, let's say, specific rights in the organization. So you would operate from forks and things like that. Then you have like a larger group of collaborators that are more kind of deeply involved in LinkML development. which will be added to a GitHub team. You will be able to assign issues to yourself, to assign pull requests to yourself, to triage, to review, and things like that a bit more easily. You will and things like that. And one of the goals is actually, and this is one of the things that some of you, I think you've seen Piotr and some others among the participants suggested, you may even go and apply to be shepherds of specific areas of LinkML, like for example, becoming code owners of a specific generator or stuff like that, or similar pieces of sections of the code. I'll get to that in a second, in a bit more depth. Then we have core developers. They have zero. There's no difference in the amount of permissions that a core developer has over collaborators. It's exactly the same. Write rights, full stop. No way to change or bypass branch protection rules or similar. But the core developer has a slightly different role. They are funded by money that is targeted specifically, not specifically, but generally at evolving the LinkML infrastructure and ecosystem, not a very specific portion of it. So they have a bit more responsibility, for example, to look at issues in a more holistic way, driving them forward, grouping them, prioritizing them, triaging them, and kind of like making sure that the overall meaning of the project is preserved. Like while other groups may be looking to get their generators and their specific subparts in place, the core developer's responsibility to make sure that the overall semantics of the language and the project isn't changing in unexpected ways. And then we have a bunch of very unimportant role, the admins, which are basically the only people that are allowed to set branch protection rules and bypass them if necessary, but they don't play any other specific role in the ecosystem. And then there are in this proposal here, if you're interested to contribute, I've put a few notes of what I think should be kind of like some thresholds of how you can go from one role to another so that it is a bit more transparent. But that's for you to kind of contribute to and tell me how do you like it and what your thoughts are about that. Next is about designing change proposals in a way that it maximizes throughput and minimizes semantic drift. So what do I mean in this fancy words? What we want to make sure is not to have these enormous backlogs of pull requests, for example, sitting around waiting 100 years for a review. And we need to establish guidelines that make it easier and faster to review pull requests by increasing some of the kind of guidelines on how you should communicate on those pull requests, some clarifying some ownership principles, like who exactly is responsible for pushing and at which phase of the pull requests time of existence, when to have draft state, when to have, and what exactly to write in it. So there's some initial proposals here in 3.1.26 for like some clarifications on that, but there's of course a lot of stuff that we need to do to improve here, and suggestions are of course welcome by everyone. Next, I've hinted at that, is establish code owners as a means to decentralize governance a little bit. So right now, the governance is necessarily and unfortunately a little bit centralized around the core developers. So they are kind of like, they are responsible for going to the community and getting feedback about the governance and then establishing the governance and the rules. But what would be kind of cool would be if, let's say, that could be even more, shared in the community. So, for example, we had this, we were talking about this YAML generator pull request before. If there was, let's say, a little group of people that would be stakeholders and interest group that are focusing on specifically the YAML generator, they could review each other without the need of anyone from the core team to intervene, and they could choose by themselves to merge that pull request into main. So as you've said before, this pull request, for example, was already reviewed, so it could have been merged by you if you would have been made a code owner for that piece of code. And that's exactly, I think, what we should be doing here is to establish a system for code owners, for generators, and potentially validators as a first pass. Here I saw Frank's and post and Damien's declaration of potentially building independent implementations of pieces of the infrastructure. Of course, that's a little bit different. This will happen, when they're building generators and stuff like that in Rust or in Java that are living outside, and the shared commitment is just around the LinkML model. But I think the similar principles of governance could possibly apply in these kinds of cases as well, even in the internally maintained generators. All right, AI contributions, very conflicting subject, but a very, very simply used, a very simple solution that we have proposed and for now put into play. We do not care about AI at all. Use it as much as you want. It doesn't really matter to anyone, because whenever you submit something to LinkML, it is absolutely expected that you own it. You have to be able to explain it. You have to understand it. You have to stand behind it and take responsibility for it. Whether you used Claude Code to do this, that's your problem. And so the AI covenant basically just makes it clear that what we do not want is someone to take an issue, Claude fix it, make a PR and say, Claude made this fix for me, please review it. That's absolutely out of the question. We cannot possibly review such PRs, and they will just be rejected without review. So you do not even have any kind of requirements to declare whether you are using AI or not. There's very few exceptions we added in the AI covenant when you're using AI, I think for specific discussion analyses and stuff like that. But the point is really, it's about personal responsibility, and you have to own what you're proposing. Full stop. Feel free to review and to make change suggestions to the AI covenant. It's quite, small, limited, and I think it should be relatively clear. Lastly, we are trying to improve our triaging strategies right now. So as you know, one of the biggest problems of a project of this size, and especially when community growth is accelerating, is the amount of issues flooding in. And having 650 or so issues open is a quite daunting sort of prospect for a relatively small team of core developers, so people that are funded on funds that are geared at the overall LinkML environment. So what we are trying to do is we're trying to pivot a little bit from what I would term here a bit meanly noise-directed triaging, which is basically a term for whoever makes the most comments and whoever makes the most review this, reminders will be reviewed first, to something a little bit more systematic. And so we are trying to build some tooling that kind of builds, analyzes all the issues that we have, finds synergies between them, identify core issues that we can potentially attack at once, and hopefully using some of these kind of stuff that we've talked about before about contributions to involve the wider community as well in tackling some of those. So if you are, for example, a contributor to a specific piece of code that really has 6 highly critical issues associated with them, you shouldn't surprise you when you get an email from one of us saying David, do you think you could maybe look at this little problem here? It would really take care of 7 issues at once, and you would do the world a great favor. So something like that. So this is something that we are kind of working on, and if you're interested, we can show you the system that we are building in a future call at some point. Secondly, we have this. We have established this bot. You might have noticed this. It's basically a state issue bot that we have configured with some of your feedback quite conservatively to close issues that didn't see any kind of sign of aliveness for 3 full years. It closes. It doesn't close anything immediately. It just sets it at stale, and then closes when staleness isn't revoked within 3 months. And it's also quite conservative in the types of issues it's closing, because it doesn't close, for example, issues that are clearly tagged with a bug. So if you are, for example, if you've reported the bug and you just want to be absolutely sure that this issue, even in 10 years' time, won't close your issue, you can ask or yourself add the bug tag to that issue, and it won't be affected. Right, that's it. So yeah, I just want to make sure that you are all, even if you're just users of LinkML, you should be you follow kind of processes and discussions that affect the parts of the ecosystem that really that are really about things that really concern you. If you're concerned about your RAML, or you're concerned about JSON schema, or you're concerned about the pydantic pydantic generators, let's say, feel free to just contribute to this discussion, voice your concerns and things like that. So everyone should feel enabled and allowed to make to say their piece on every PR and every issue that is about things that you care about. And if you feel up to it, come to us and say, I want to be a code owner for this piece. I want to steward this piece of LinkML, and I want to help moving it forward and evolving it. This would really help decentralizing and removing some of the pressure on the core team to get to move the overall project forward. So with that, we maintain a shared contract together here with a large community of users, and I hope that you agree that creating some better governance will help, fulfilling and maintaining that shared contract better. That's it. If you have questions, go ahead. I don't know what you discussed in the chat.
There is a longer question in the chat from Corey Levinson. If you want to.
Hey, I can say hi. Thanks, Nico. This is all really great. It was just a comment about AI agents autonomously submitting PRs, which is, I think, a thing that some open source projects are seeing. And sorry if I missed that, if that was already included in the covenant, but I think it'd be important just looking forward for that to be something that we're being explicit about as well, in terms of policies.
That's a good point. Like, right now, the spirit is we would not consider a PR created. So in the spirit of the AI covenant is definitely that there has to be a human that takes responsibility for the change proposal. So a purely AI agent generated PR would not be even looked at, let's say. So it would just be closed. But it's true that it might not be explicitly said in the AI covenant right now that an AI agent creating a PR would be treated thus.
Now, if that were to happen and the PR were created by an agent and someone decided to adopt it and be the person who stands by it, like, that's great. That's just fine.
Sure.
But absolutely, okay. We have to just have a policy of, like, if you're not willing to stand behind the work, then we can't spend our time reviewing it. Nico, I just want to thank you very much for all of this guidance and for giving our community a chance to make it, like you said, a covenant on what our shared contract needs to be together. I think this is going to be great for the community as a whole. I personally am really excited to see this implemented. I know that I'm much more effective when I know how things are supposed to work. And I think that will be true for other people in the group. So I just want to tell you how much I appreciate that. And then I want to add to that, and I'm really excited to have the rest of this community weigh in on those docs. And please, if you have other people in your groups that are not part of this call right now, ask them to weigh in on those community docs as well. Obviously, it has to work for us as core developers, but we also want it to work for everyone in the community. So yes, please take a look at those.
David?
Yeah, I have also a question like I really like that this is more structured now. It was always coming up again and again, so that some people don't know like who to contact to get something done or get some permission. But I wonder like for the more strategic direction, so do you also plan to use like more milestone planning, or that you try to, don't know, address, for example, all CLI interfaces or this configuration system where probably there are a lot of issues all touching this, that you say, okay, this should be a focus for the next release?
Yeah, so this a great point. I personally use milestones for other open source initiatives in which I'm involved, but this hasn't happened so far in LinkML. So I did create, let's say, milestones just for the community because I wanted to know, is there something super urgent that absolutely must go into 1.10 before we make a release, but mostly just as a way for you to just, come and say, please add that. And you just have like a to-do list for milestone, and not really like a formal milestone planning where you sit, let's say, in the beginning of the iteration and say, let's get all this stuff done for 10.1 and not do a 10.1 release before all the issues are closed. So I think right now, the way that the LinkML model development works, it doesn't lend itself to this sort of very stringent milestone planning. But I because like things are coming, let's say on a Tuesday, and I've solved on a Thursday, and then the next. So it's not really like very plannable. It's more dynamic. But I will see how yeah, we can organize this a little bit more. Maybe we will play with milestone planning a bit in the next iterations and see if this helps moving forward. But to your second question, yes, these kind of like systematic issues where, let's say, there are 15 reports about problems with the configuration. These the goal would be to kind of like block them together and then just say, Corey and Kevin, please, let's just plow through these 15 issues and solve the configuration in the next 2 or 3 months or something like that, and not do anything else. So that would be something that we might come out of the strategic planning triaging that I was thinking about.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
time's
thank you
over.
again to Nico. As you were about to say, I think time is up. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate this community and the time that you put into it. And we will see you again next month. Thank you very much.